Parents all over the country are speaking up at school board meetings about the highly sexual, inappropriate books in their kids' school libraries. A man recently spoke out at the Hillsborough County Public School Board meeting about a pornographic book available to middle schoolers.
The kids at these schools are 11 to 13 years old, and it is encouraging them to go on the dating site GRINDR. You guys, the world that you live in, you know what GRINDR is. It is not just a place where you go and meet other people. It is a gay sex app. And you are encouraging children to go onto that app and engage in these sexual activities. You are opening them up to sexual predators, and you are opening them up to grooming.
That sounds to me like the epitome of grooming. Rasmussen reports polled 1,000 people and asked, quote, how concerned are you that school-age children are being exposed to sexual material that is not age appropriate? Take a look at the results. 55% said they are very concerned, and 22% said they are somewhat concerned, so that's a clear majority. Only 12% said they weren't very concerned. There's about 8% who said they're not concerned at all. 3% said they're not sure. Rasmussen reports also asked, quote, how important is it that public schools fully inform parents about what is being taught to their children in classrooms? 70% said it's very important, and 19% said it's not very, said it's somewhat important. So that left a small group of people who didn't think it was important, somewhat important, etc. Now let's bring in Rasmussen Reports head pollster Mark Mitchell to break all of this down for us. So look, Mark, I'm going to ask you what you think are the takeaways, but you know what? I think it's pretty clear that most parents, wherever you sit on whatever side of the aisle, think it's pretty important that parents know what's being taught in school and are concerned.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll tell you, that concept there that you just mentioned is really counter-narrative. This is a big poll for us. It's us at our element, because I went and looked at the polling that's happened in the last year since, Glenn Youngkin had that come from behind victory over pretty much this topic. And there really has been very little mainstream polling of this concept of kids getting exposed to sexually inappropriate material in school. Most of the polls out there are mainstream pollsters with really suspect polls pushing the concept of, voters opposed to Don't Say Gay bill, or voters overwhelmingly support sex education in schools. So us having the ability, because of our sponsor, to go in and ask questions that I don't think have really ever been asked before. And also, this is a publicly sponsored poll, so your viewers can go and see. We asked a bunch of questions that really deep dive into this topic, and the results are very surprising. So our sponsor was Capital Resource Institute, and they came to us because they're very concerned about this pornographic material, this age inappropriate stuff. And it's being framed by people like the ALA as, really about diversity, or about people being opposed to it, favoring book bans. And so we wanted to go out in the field and give them a little bit of fuel that they could use to fight back. That one book, This Book is Gay, with showing kids how to use GRINDR or how to have hookups on Craigslist, like those questions really aren't being asked anywhere. So this first one, concern about sexually material that's not age appropriate being taught to kids in school, 77%. And that 77% includes people that don't have kids, that aren't grandparents, that don't really have necessarily a dog in this fight. And the party breakdowns, there's a difference between Republicans and Democrats, but not too much. Republicans, 94% of them are concerned, but 61% of Democrats and 77% of independents. That's, a really big number. So now the other question, how important is it that parents are fully informed about what kids are being taught in school? 89% say it's important. 98% of Republicans, but also 84% of Democrats. So there's this concept that our country in general is fiscally conservative, but socially liberal. I don't know. Take a look at that number, and are those numbers reflective of a country that's socially liberal? Or maybe it's just that the limit is set at the kids. But I definitely think it goes counter to the narrative that schools can be unilaterally trusted to be the arbiters of what topics are taught to kids. Parents do not agree at all.
No, they don't. And you know what, Mark? It was such an in-depth poll, as you mentioned, and I do recommend that people go and look at it, because you asked the questions every which way you could ask them. And there was pretty much overarching the sentiment that parents are not on board with this and people in general. And you mentioned Glenn Youngkin, and I'll tell you, that was the major factor in Virginia. I'm in Virginia, and I saw so many people I knew personally, moms cross the party line and not just vote for him, but campaign for him because they were so upset. So this is a unifying issue if Republicans take notice. And
Yeah,
Mark, I also want to tell people that you go in more depth on your YouTube channel, which I am so glad you're doing. It's called Rasmussen Reports. You can find it on YouTube, and you break down all of this for people, right?
Yeah, and we have a video dropping today on this where we go into some of the bigger questions. I have some previews. So the homosexual dating app GRINDR, for instance, that you mentioned in your intro, we asked by what age should kids be exposed to that, and gave them a couple of selections. So let's just pick the age 14. So do you think a child should be exposed to GRINDR before the age of 14? Only 13% of voters say yes, and the number's 22% for Democrats, but only 6% for Republicans and 10% for independents. So, I mean, Democrats don't think that kids should be exposed to GRINDR in middle school, let alone anybody else.
Yeah, and that's not what we're told in the media. Go watch his YouTube channel. I love it because I'm a data nerd, so I love listening to all the context. Thank you, Mark, for always being with us, and I'm excited about your YouTube channel.
Thanks.
Okay, join us back here again tomorrow. We're all out of time, but we'll be here with more absolute truth.